Hey everyone, welcome, welcome, welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. And particular thanks to Barry Trachtenberg and Rabab Abdulhadi, who we are so grateful to have. Wake Forest loss is our gain. We're just so honored to have you here with us. We really are. So for those of us who are here in this room meeting in person.
Recording in progress.
That's okay. Classic us. We're meeting on the lands of the Manse Lenape people in the Nape Hoking. New York City is an intertribal land and it's under the stewardship of multiple indigenous nations, including the Shinnecock, Taino, Abenaki, and Canarsie people. So as we gather here in refusal at one kind of settler colonial violence, we recognize that, everything that we've borne witness to Israel doing over the past year, in the past 76 years, so the erasure, the dehumanization, the genocide, all of that has been done on these lands, the indigenous peoples of these lands, and continues to be done on these lands. So as CUNY for Palestine, it's really important that, we strengthen our connection and our solidarity with Indigenous struggles here on Turtle Island, and that, we recognize how linked these struggles are. So one of the small ways that we've started to do that is some of us here are collaborating with American Indian Community House to come up with a list of 5 demands to the CUNY administration. So those demands will be presented later this year. So everyone who's a CUNY person in this room, keep an eye out, show up, stand in solidarity with those demands when they come out. So before we begin, I just want to take a moment to have a moment of silence to honor our martyrs. And that includes the now more than 186,000 martyrs of the latest genocidal assault in Palestine at the hands of the Zionist state. But it also includes all the martyrs of Israel's genocidal state project, because it is a genocidal project. And that genocidal project has been ongoing for 76 years. We also have in mind our brothers and sisters in Lebanon, in Syria, and in Yemen, who are also facing the brunt of Zionist state violence right now. And we know some of their names. Hind Rajab, Rafat Alarir, but every single person had a life as full as your life and my life. And I want to take a bit of time to sit with that, to remember them, and to draw from that memory a strength that, keeps us going in the struggle. Thank you.
Thanks, Brett, and thank you to all of you for joining us here in person and on Zoom. And of course, a big thank you to both Rabab and to Barry Trachtenberg. So Barry Trachtenberg holds the Rubin Presidential Chair in Jewish History at Wake Forest University in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, a historian of modern Jewish history, the Holocaust, the Jewish nationalism. He's the author of 3 books, most recently, The Holocaust and the Exile of Yiddish, and the United States and the Nazi Holocaust, Race, Refuge, and Remembrance. He has published on issues related to American support for Israel, Zionism, Anti-Zionism and Anti-Semitism in Venues Such as Jewish Currents, The Forward, Electronic Intifada, and Mondawise. In 2017, he testified to the US Congress on the topic of anti-Semitism on college and university classrooms. In 2023, he submitted with colleagues expert testimony on a lawsuit filed by the Center for Constitutional Rights, and in 2024 testified in the trial DCI Palestine versus Biden, seeking an emergency injunction to stop military and diplomatic support for Israeli government's genocidal assault on Gaza. He is a member of the academic advisory boards of Jewish Voice for Peace and the Institute for the Critical Study of Zionism. Barry will be providing a little bit of context to how it is that we are holding this event here, because it was originally meant to be held at Wake Forest University, and as some of you may know, it faced heavy censorship. So Barry will provide us with that context and lead us into the talk by Rabab. Thank you, Barry.
Hi, thank you. I'm so grateful first to see Rabab on screen. Hi. And I'm so grateful to you all for organizing this event, which is really the most powerful rebuke to the decision by my university to summarily cancel the talk by Dr. Abdulhadi. It's an incredible show of solidarity, and I really cannot be more grateful. I'll just give you a few minutes of context for the events that happened. For the last 2 years, I've been part of a faculty-led seminar on the topic of genocide and memory studies, bring together faculty from a number of disciplines to come together to research different aspects of this question. And soon after October 7th, we realized we needed to turn part of our attention over to what was clearly the genocide that was unfolding. And last year, we hosted a talk by the author Nathan Thrall, whose work, A Day in the Life of Abed Salama, was making the rounds. And he came to campus and gave a very powerful talk, but against enormous opposition from different groups on campus who thought we should not use the word genocide in the title of our programming. We resisted that. We insisted upon it. We lost a lot of support for that, had to do fundraising for that. And then a week later, he won the Pulitzer Prize for that work. So that was an enormous rebuke. And we realized with the 1-year anniversary of October 7th coming up, we wanted to bring in a really important voice to talk about the experience of Palestinians under 76 years of ethnic cleansing and Nakba and genocide. And the only person who we wanted to come was Rabab. I have had the honor of knowing Rabab for more than 20 years, and she has been a leading light to so many of us. And we were thrilled when our proposal to bring Rabab to come for a talk was embraced by many units around the university, the Humanities Institute, my department of history, our program in Middle East and South Asian Studies, the Department of Politics and International Studies. Everyone was very much on board. Rabab's record is so strong and so powerful that it raised no concerns. So planning for the event got underway, and my timeline's a little fuzzy, but in about the last 10, 12 days or so, when we began to spread word of the talk, one of the students on our campus who saw the flyer, who's very active in pro-Israel organizations on campus, began to raise questions about the talk, and immediately was able to tap into this really large body of organizations that are out there that seek to silence Palestinian voices, whether they're on campuses, in the community, in newspapers and publishing, really around the world. And we all know this history. But they were able to tap into this and started a petition drive that riled up parent groups, that riled up students on campus. And initially, our university pushed back against any demands to cancel the talk. And we were in conversations about with various campus administrators about how to make sure the talk was going to be held safely, so that the talk would be protected, Rabab would be protected. And we really thought the university was doing the right thing, and we were sort of happy by this. And then we woke up one morning a little over a week ago to find that the university had summarily canceled the event without consultation of any of the department heads of the various sponsoring programs, without any of us who were actually doing the work to organize the talk. They just caved in to the protests. We immediately started pushing back, waging our own petition drive. Dozens, if not hundreds, of parents and students began protesting with the university, many of them students of Middle Eastern ancestry, including Palestinian students who are at our university. And in response to that, the university, again, had a meeting with the department heads, not with any of us actually organizing the talk. And then they offered a series of very insulting options, which included agreeing to pay all of the expenses to Rabab if she agreed not to come to campus, that if she did come on October 7th to give a talk in the community, then they would withhold all of the money that had been promised to sponsor the talk, or offered a third very, very vague option, which would be to, at some point down the road, bring in a series of different Palestinian speakers to offer a range of perspectives, which would the effect of which would be to bury Rabab's perspective within a wider range of voices. All of these were incredibly insulting, obviously. And so what we did was we immediately turned to our community, and we put out the call among supporters, we have many groups in our area. We have a group of Black Lives Matter that has been organizing for Palestinians in the last year. We have a group Muslims for Better North Carolina, Jewish Voice for Peace, the Triad Abolition Project, Housing Justice Now. We put out the call, and within 8 hours raised all of the money possible to render the university irrelevant. And we found a brave pastor who's quite new to their job, willing to give their church over. And so I'm really happy to say that Rabab will be coming in on Sunday and giving her talk. And it's in a way, it's an enormous rebuke to my university, who has just infuriated its faculty and so large sectors of its student body, and really was held to account. And I'm both sort of thrilled at the outcome and deeply saddened by what we had to go through, and the disrespect to our speaker here, who is so important to us all. But we're looking forward to hearing the talk very, very soon. I'll leave it at that. I'm not sure if I'm supposed to introduce Rabab or someone else is doing the introducing. I'm sorry, I didn't catch the order.
I'm going to do the introduction. Thanks, Barry.
Okay, thank you all. Thank you all. And Rabab, I really look forward to seeing you in just 2 days.
Thank you so much, Barry. Thank you for making the time to join us tonight, and really just, for your courage and for everything that you've done to persist with this event. And we're really excited to hear that it's moving forward. It's bittersweet. I mean, it's a shame that it was censored to begin with, but I'm happy that it's moving forward. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you all. Take care. Bye.
Thank you. And now we'll move into introducing Dr. Rabab Abdulhadi, really someone who doesn't need an introduction, as I know everyone here in person and online has been familiar with her incredible work, her amazing, brilliant work, and also inspired by her work. And I think, and especially when we hear this from Barry in the presentation that was canceled, it's a reminder really how you've fought to for so many years really to create and to maintain this space for people like us
to be able to talk in the academy about the horrors of and realities of settler colonialism in Palestine, Israeli, U.S.-backed Israeli settler colonialism, the ongoing genocide, which we know, didn't start on October 7th, but has been ongoing for over 100 years. And it's this courage that brings us all that we honor and respect, and why we're all here today. So Dr. Rabab Abdulhadi is the founding director and senior scholar of Arab and Muslim ethnicities and diasporas studies program at San Francisco State University, and principal investigator of Teaching Palestine, Pedagogical Praxis, and the Indivisibility of Justice. She's an internationally known scholar and distinguished professor who is committed to community development and student engagement alongside her extensive academic work and publication and teaching schedule. She received her BA summa cum laude in Special Honors Curriculum, Sociology and Women's Studies at Hunter College, CUNY, and her MA and MPhil and PhD from Yale University, where she was awarded the prestigious Sterling Fellowship, a full scholarship, a dissertation fellowship, and the Teaching Excellence Award, received for the first time by a Palestinian, Arab, or Muslim. Dr. Abdulhadi has taught at eight transnational sites of higher education, including Yale, CUNY, Hunter College, the American University in Cairo, and Birzeit University, among others. She was the first director of the Center for Arab American Studies at the University of Michigan, Dearborn. She initiated and developed several projects, such as Mapping Arab Diasporas, Intellectual and Pedagogical Institute in American and Arab American Studies for Palestinian and U.S. graduate students in collaboration with Al-Quds University. Picturing Arabs and Muslim film series and Arab American writer series. She is widely published with over 80 articles, book chapters, anthologies, and co-edited books, and her works have appeared in Arabic, English, Farsi, French, German, Italian, Spanish, and academic journals, anthologies. It is such an honor and a pleasure to have you here with us.
Thank you so much, my friend and comrade and colleague. Can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make sure I see everybody, because there are some seats here for people who are sitting before. I'm very thankful to be back at CUNY. Hunter College is my alma mater. I know they changed it a lot, but we remain strong student, alumni, and faculty who are unionized, and graduate students who are unionized, right? Because you are part of the union. And so this is our pride and joy, and we are hoping to return CUNY to what it was and not allow it to be the way that it has turned to be. And I'll talk about that towards the end. I'm also very grateful and thankful to my colleague, Barry. We've worked very long time, and it was really great. And they actually, it's true what he said, the department said no immediately to the university. And then he said, what would you want to do? I said, I'll come. And he said, we'll raise the money. And I said, and the money we're raising for teaching Palestine. I don't raise honorarium for myself, but we need to pay the money for the interns. And so we need to raise money. We have no other sources. Nobody will give us money aside from that. So he said, we'll do it. I said, this would be great. I'm coming. The university contracted me to come and teach about the Aqsa the Aqsa flood. I'm going to come. I don't care what they say. I don't care what the Zionists say. I was asked to come and teach. I'm going to come and teach. They can do whatever they want. But this is also a very serious problem, because I was a few years ago, I was canceled by Yeshiva University. I was invited by two young law students, Jewish queer women. I've invited me to come and speak about Palestinian women's activism, and I said yes. And we had a long discussion. They had a lot of discussion with the various clubs. I mean, they knew exactly who I am and what I've been doing. And they did invite me, and the university president canceled took the decision to cancel right after he also had shut down a lot of student clubs. They fought, and I fought, and people in the Jewish community who were very much involved in activism, anti-Zionist, fought, but he would not reinstate it. Last year in October, the African Studies Department, African Graduate Student Union, and the Black Student Union at Syracuse University invited me to speak and give a lecture. It was in October. It was, I think, 20 or 19th or something of October. And the university president canceled. And they canceled. They had the same thing as what happened today in Wake Forest. A number of people created a petition. It was also about thousands of people. And they wrote it on behalf of parents of students. And I put parents in parentheses because I am not really sure if it was parents or it was parents, the MAGA parents that are coming always and saying, we care about this, the children and the students, and they come up with all sorts of things. And immediately, within like hours, they have a petition of thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And it's, I mean, we know that there is a button they push and they create a lot of things. And Rutgers University president also said that he received a lot of copy and paste emails, and people were very angry with him. So we know how these things happen, but that happened at Syracuse, and the Africana, the students, the faculty, they all went and demanded that the university have the event, and they claimed that they cannot guarantee my safety. Since when do you care about our safety? And I've had spoken before at Syracuse many times, and I have colleagues that I work with. And the students said that we actually are providing security and safety for her. But they insisted, they demanded that I don't speak. And I think one of the things that part of this reason for it is we have to be silenced. We have to be silenced. It is not about just one person. Palestinian narrative has to be silenced because the Zionist project is about erasure of everything and anything about Palestine. You have to erase Palestinians' presence, Palestinian relationship with the land, Palestinian culture, Palestinian music, anything that, because you cannot create a land without a people. Realize that unless you do that. I mean, this is, and the genocide we're witnessing today, killing the next generation of children can be explained. I mean, it's not all vindictiveness, and because the pilots who go and drop bombs, they're not in the face of the children, they're not seeing people, it's not face to face. And not every single person is actually necessarily acting on personal vindictive. We cannot just explain it psychologically. That all doesn't really work. There is a project, there is a design project that says we need to eliminate people. And this is the logic of settler colonialism. And if we go back to study and research the state, the US settler colonial state, and what happened with the indigenous people, yes, of course, no settler colonial project is the same as other. But if we look at them, there is always a part where people, not necessarily to replace, it's not always a replacement project. It's not always like the Zionist one, but there is always a project to get rid of the native population, of the indigenous population, for one reason or another. It includes that. And the Zionist project is one of the projects that excels in it. Excels in it, at the same time creates a side that talks about humanitarian, finds other reasons to justify it, to convince the rest of the world, and so on. So it is well studied. So it's not mystical. It's not something that we need rocket science to explain it. We have to actually be wary of it and go through it, all of it. But this is part of it. This is what's going on, and this is part and parcel of the history of Palestine. All the time, massacres are there again and again and again. There is so much slaughter. It's not just a small slaughter. It's not, and then there is hiding a lot of massacres. So, okay. So there is Deir Yassin, for example, in 1948, before 1948 Nakba takes place. It happens on April 9th, 1948, when Israel is founded in actual declaration, May 14th, 1948. The British withdraw in May 15th, 1948. And the massacre was a little bit over a month. Why was a massacre? There was going to be, because the Zionist leadership, the Haganah, this was the official. And they said also this was the Stern and the Lehi gang, who were not organized and disciplined members of the Haganah, but it all was paramilitary groups. And they went into Deir Yassin and slaughtered Palestinians. But then the leaders said that it was necessary because Deir Yassin was on the road from Jerusalem to Tel Aviv. Deir Yassin had to happen. And the news of killing of the Palestinians in Deir Yassin needed to be spread all over Palestine. And in addition to pointing the guns at the head of Palestinians, to force 250,000 of Palestinians to flee in 1948. Thus, the birth of the Palestinian refugee problem. So everything, then there is many other massacres that the Zionist movement continues to deny until, for example, Tantura, an Israeli graduate student at Hebrew University, writes a thesis that his advisor refused to accept about the Tantura massacre, right? It was, by the way, we're not believed as Palestinians until somebody writes it and until the New York Times validates it. Even though we know that the New York Times doesn't really tell the truth, we keep validating what they say. So this graduate students, and then a director says, I'm going to do a story about it, and goes and interviews the Israelis who actually were part as Zionists of killing the Palestinians. Now, there is a story, a novel that the late Egyptian writer Radwa Ashur wrote, Tanturia. I mean, this is the story. Everybody in Palestinians knows about Tantura. But this is something that many times the Zionist movement attributes to folklore. This is Palestinian folklore. This is something that people repeat again and again. It's not really something true. It's Palestinian tales. And so now it becomes a validate because they actually testify. The very people who conducted the killing testify that they did that. And so it becomes a reality. There is now more and more testimonies that come out of the Israeli archives, and it gets declassified. And we know every once in a while they declassify. And of course, we need to take the archives, the colonial archives, whether we talk about Israeli, US, British, wherever it is, because they declassify whatever they want to. And sometimes because of pressure, they declassify in the US Congress, Spanish archives. They declassify whatever they want to. We also have to take it with a grain of salt because it is the official archive of a colonial order. So what's in it? It depends on what the colonial order wanted to tell us at any particular time. And sometimes we cannot actually test the oral history of a people against the colonial archive because the people have died. They're no longer around to be able to tell. So all of that we need to take into consideration. But when they are opening that, now we know about that during the Nakba and before, there were Palestinian women who were raped. Because Israel also, there is the myth that they spread among Palestinians too, that Israeli soldiers have the highest honors. They don't, seriously, they don't rape. They cut into a city, they never steal. Really, I mean, people, they may actually force you out of your home. So in 1967, I was alive in 1967 when Israel occupied the West Bank, Gaza, Golan Heights, Jerusalem, and Sinai. And one of the things that my parents did is they put many sweaters on top of us. And my dad has a very good stamp collection, whatever we had, because the Israelis came to town and they thought they're going to drive us away. We weren't going to leave, but if they push us away, we would take whatever we could take. And they thought they will drive us away, but nobody was thinking at the time that they're going to come to steal. Until you start hearing much more things in the oral history, until you start seeing them going in there, stealing the gold that women had, stealing money. And now it's known. Now it is well known fact, not only some folklore. We know that this is happening. We know that there is sexual, not only in prison, because we know in prison that there are Palestinian women and men who are being abused in prison. We know that there are queer people, just like women, that are threatened in prison in order to become collaborative. We know all of this stuff happens. But before, all of these tales are all talked about, rumors. They rumors until somebody comes and talks about. And I'm not saying that necessarily something in the archives or somebody that proved to be a fact is only the thing that we should believe, because we also need to hear the words and the lived experiences of the marginalized and colonized people, because that's where, if we are actually really for justice, and so we need to produce knowledge based on that. But it's really, think about that. Where do we get it? So in the Israeli archives now, that how as little as they are being released, there's a lot of stuff that's coming out. But also who has access to the Israeli archives? Actually, Israeli scholars. Not many Palestinian scholars can go. They have to have so much permission. You have to get again and again. And the Palestinian scholars who actually get eventually, they have to say, and even Israeli scholars who are against the state and has opposition also have a very hard time getting into the archives, because the Israeli soldiers are watching you. And in the Arab and Arab American feminism's book, we have a chapter by Shireen Saikali when she was a graduate student, and she describes how difficult for her to even go and sit in the archives while the soldiers are watching her. And she's originally from Haifa. Her family were displaced in 1948. And she's sitting there trying to read about her history, and they're watching her. She's unable to even access archives about her own studies that are supposed to be neutral knowledge while they are watching her. So I mean, think about that. And the reason I'm saying this is because this is CUNY Graduate Center. This is the place where people are producing graduate studies, doctorate degrees, thesis, people who are teaching and so on. These are questions that are raised, by the way, in different contexts, not only in Palestine, but there is always the exceptionality that is raised about Palestine. Everything is already normalized, but then it comes to Palestine. But there is always the but. And if we think about that as another context of settler colonialism, and the resistance is also to settler colonialism, we stop exceptionalizing Palestine and think about it as something like everywhere else. So I think it's really important to think about that, about the how we understand knowledge and where do these things come from. I just want to say one more thing about the archives and the whole question of the production of knowledge based on that, and part of I'll come back to that as a section. So in terms of this is a very important part, because how we think about things, how do we historicize, how do you think about history is very important. So the Aqsa flood, I mean, I think they have, what is it? Why is it called Aqsa flood? Aqsa, because of the Aqsa mosque, and because before that happened, there were so many attacks on the Aqsa mosque. Actually, today, the settlers went all over the Aqsa mosque, and the Israeli police, because supposedly the police controls the Aqsa mosque, because Jerusalem is supposed to be part of Israel. So it was annexed, right? So they went into the Aqsa mosque and they intervened in it, and also the settlers went in groves to the Aqsa mosque to pray. So there have been many attacks in the Aqsa mosque. There were women called murabitat. They will just sit there together in the Aqsa mosque. They were chased away and beaten. Israel tried to put cameras but then the Palestinians protested. They had to remove them. But there has been more and more harassment. And then the Israeli government carved more spaces and gave more spaces to the Zionist group. They're actually digging underneath the Aqsa mosque that it might collapse at any time. So there is a lot of stuff that's going on in Jerusalem that's changing the whole history. And there has been many people attacked, prevented from going to pray, even though they say sometimes, okay, only people over 50 years old. You cannot go if you are under 50 years old, because supposedly if you are 49 years old, you might carry a gun, but you are 50 years old, you can't carry a gun. So they prevent everybody, and they prevent Palestinians from 48 areas who have Israeli citizenship to go. Not long ago, Palestinians all came to pray in the Aqsa mosque, and they all had to turn around on the highway, drive against traffic, and they parked their cars and walked, because the Israeli military at that time, it was the military controls part of the highways that are in the West Bank that they control and created settlement roads. They call them bypass roads because they have to bypass Palestinian villages. So they can first, they don't have to be troubled, but also because they can reach their jobs at Tel Aviv and Jerusalem faster. Okay, so so this is what they've been doing all along in the Aqsa Mosque, and they've been again and again and again warned. So this is one reason why it's called al-Aqsa. And flood, kind of has let's say a contagious effect, effervescent effect, which we'll see. And that now, why? And I'm not in the minds of the people who designed it, who carried out. None of us are. Everybody who says they are is speculating and lying like hell, because nobody knows. I mean, even the people who are outside leadership, political leadership of Hamas, which was Hamas and some parts of Islamic Jihad, that's it. Nobody else knew about it, do not know, have no idea what was going on. It was very, security was, so they do not know what has happened. But the people who are, the Palestinians, and there were Palestinians, I mean, Palestinians were happy about it. And so I'm not going to kind of sugarcoat it and say, but they weren't happy about Israeli families, children, even the ones who were at the Nova, music festival, consuming drugs and so on. It's not something that Palestinian society is very much fond of, to say the least. It's majority of the Palestinians. But because now you're talking about maybe 1,200 Israeli, whatever Israelis, that means each one of them might liberate 1,100 Palestinian prisoners. Going by the Shalit, this every Israeli who is kidnapped means that 1,000 might, because Shalit exchange liberated, freed 1,100 Palestinians, and every single, if you go back and look at the history, just remove the fog, the clouds around every single, you see every single, whether it's successful or failed, whether it's right or wrong, however you think about it, Palestinian military operation, plane hijacking, buses, whatever it is, you will see the demand is always freedom of prisoners. Freedom of prisoners, because it is hellish. And what Israel is doing now, there is over 11,000 prisoners now in the West Bank and Gaza. There were 4,000 before October 7th. There is 11,000 now. There is about 10,000 in Sidi Teman in Gaza alone. And one of the things we think is that the reason Israel keeps arresting to increase the bargaining position that they have, so they can negotiate with the Palestinians to release the newer prisoners and keep in prison the ones who are longer and may die or so on, because they want to get out the people who may die. For example, Walid Dakka, who died not long ago, this past week, his family had another petition to the Israeli Supreme Court to just release his body so they could bury him. And the Israeli Supreme Court said no. And he died because he was very sick with cancer. And the Israeli prison authority refused to release him, to just die in the hospital in peace. They refused. And now they refuse to release his body. The same thing happened with Khadr Adnan, who was on hunger strike. He was on hunger strike. I mean, this is an answer to people who say, Palestinians, why don't you pursue nonviolent resistance? Khadr Adnan was on hunger strike. And he is one of the people who sent the solidarity message, the first one, to the Pelican Bay prisoners who were on a hunger strike, protesting solitary confinement. He was the first Palestinian prisoner, and actually anybody from outside, to send them a solidarity message. So he was on a hunger strike, protesting the administrative detention, being held without charges, in secret, without knowing why he's not being able to go into trial without any due process. So he was on hunger strike, and he died because of hunger strike. They refused to release his body to his family, and this is collective punishment. This is part of collective punishments. Part of it is from British emergency regulations, and part of it to crush the prisoner, to crush the family, to crush the community, and scare everybody and say, "Don't you dare do something like this." So prisoners are very precious in the Palestinian society, and people become really, and all the freed prisoners, by the way, there is not a single Palestinian prisoner who was freed because they finished their sentence. The only ones is if they have been arrested for administrative detention for 6 months, they get released, and then maybe revolving door, they'll get arrested again. Go check all the record. I mean, it's mind-boggling to keep thinking about, but because this is part and parcel of keeping up the occupation and the settler colonial regime. You cannot do it unless you keep doing it again and again to break the people and to. So this is big part of it. I think also another thing, without like judging, we can discuss what tactics and so on. I'm not a military person. I've never been trained or carried a gun in my life. I wanted to in 1982, but my elders told me, no, I wouldn't be any good if I go to Lebanon. I will just make it very hard for the fighters and so on. Stay here because I had no skills. Stay here and educate. That would be the best thing that you could do. I was hurt as a young person and so on, because I thought I could do something. But I listened to my elders, and I really stayed here and did work. And I think they were right. And I think that's what elders should do. They should not just let people do whatever they want to do without modeling and mentoring us and dealing with us. But so I never did. But we can talk about it. I can talk about things that I know. But I think one of the things that really bothered the Israeli establishment so much about the Aqsa flood, one is that it was done as a surprise. So the Israeli might of the Israeli intelligence could not detect. The US might of the intelligence, which has a base right next to Gaza, did not detect. They demobilized the spying intelligence satellite and what is it? The satellite and telephones, the networks. They could not communicate with each other. I mean, this is like, and this is Palestinians. Honestly, I mean, they may say that they have huge capacity, but it's very small capacity. This was for the mighty state of Israel and the mighty army and the mighty capacity. It's a huge insult. It's a huge insult. It's like, a little kid coming, challenging a huge, big giant. And so that was really a problem. How did they dare, and how did they succeed? That's and so there were a lot of stories. First, we were told that Palestinians burned the bodies of children in the kibbutzim, and then it turned out that Israel applied the Hannibal doctrine. Hannibal doctrine, which is it's usually in the case of soldiers, that they applied it that it's better to kill soldiers rather than make them be taken alive, because then they become a bargaining chip to exchange for prisoners. After Hezbollah captured prisoners and had them displayed in Khiyam prison, and they were displayed on top of a tank. And actually, I think they were dead, right? They were dead, and exchanged their bodies. We saw them at one point when we visited Khiyam, and we saw after Khiyam was destroyed and built. So they imposed this, but they did the Hannibal also against the civilians. If you want to see people in the kibbutzim who were not, let's say, even soldiers, at that point they were not wearing the military uniform. Let's agree that they were children. They were civilians. Okay, they bombed. The cars were charred. The houses were charred. The charring of the houses and the bombs are not the kind of charring that could be caused by a few, machine guns, because that's the only thing that the Palestinian fighters had. They couldn't have more to be able to infiltrate the border, to be able to get there. So this was what the Israeli army did. And the Israeli army, they actually acted, somebody called the helicopter, the Air Force, and said, come and bomb. And the Air Force was not believing that. And then they said they came and bombed because they wanted they acted on it, actually on impulse. And so after a while, they brought the pictures and they said, this is what the Palestinians did. And they realized it wasn't really the Palestinians. The extent of the damage could only be caused by bombing air raids. Okay. So this is, okay. Now I'm still not saying that it's right, it's not right. I'm not there, to do that. I mean, we could talk about resistance, and I believe it's the right of every people to resist and defend themselves if they are being occupied and colonized. The other thing about it is that there were like when Israel says they infiltrated the border. Let's talk about the border. First, all borders are colonial borders. Let's agree on that. No borders have been set by God and are going to stay there forever and ever. They are set by colonialism and they can be removed by colonialism. And they've been changed. Secondly, the very thing that Israel calls the borders between the Green Line and the Gaza and the West Bank, between Palestinians. In fact, if people think about it, they have different imaginary when they think of Gaza, when they think of Naqab, where there are 40 Palestinian villages inside Israel, unrecognized, because Israel refuses to recognize them and give them water, electricity, all the various things, even though the people who live there are part of what Israel calls the Bedouin community, whose conventional elders signed the lives of their children, male children, in 1950, after Israel was created, to serve in the Israeli army. And the children don't want to do it anymore. A lot of them defy, but some serve. Israel still does not recognize the villages and remove some of the villages to create settlements funded by the Jewish National Fund. And we saw some of them when we were there. Okay, so Naqab is in the middle. There is Hebron and there is Gaza. They're all the same community. They just live in different borders. So there is Gaza is under one area. There is Naqab, and there is Hebron, and they're all part of the same relatives, the same community, and people think of them are belonging in different geographies. They are in today, but they are part of the same community. And you stand on top of Naqab, for example, you see Hebron, and you see Gaza, and you see the sea. You can actually see the Mediterranean Sea. People do not think. So when people from Gaza go across the border, what border? It's their people and their land and their families. And also, it is not like Palestinians in Gaza have not tried all sorts of things to protest at the border. In 2018, Palestinians in Gaza organized something called the Great March of Return. People remember. And they started it, very interesting, they started it on March 30th, 2018, because March 30th, 1976 is when Palestinians in the 48 areas declared the Day of the Land, because Israel never stopped from 1948 until today to expropriate land of Palestinians who are citizens of Israel, to force Palestinians to destroy their homes and not to give them permits to build. It continues every single day. 3 weeks ago, they forced a Palestinian to pay the bulldozer to destroy his home, and he had to do it because if the state does it, it will be even more expensive for the dogs and the helicopters. And so this continues to happen. Hasn't stopped. It's not like a practice that has stopped. Okay, so so they declared the Day of the Land, 1976, and they do it every single year. So the Great March of Return, the organizer in Gaza, started it on March 30th, 2018, and what happened? And they said it will conclude on May 15, 2018, because it was the 70th anniversary of Nakba. What happened? Israel started shooting at them. There were so many people killed. There were so many people shot, and they were at the border. They were flying kites, and so they shot so many people. Even they put up a banner of Martin Luther King, Gandhi, and Mandela. The New York Times even made fun of them. They want to put the symbols of these peaceful people. If you do it, it's not okay. And if you don't do it, it's not okay. I mean, there is anything people do, even if it is educational, it's pedagogical instrument to let the younger generation be aware of the struggles of people elsewhere. It's not allowed. I mean, this is also being, and think keep in mind that it is a very isolated community, because there has been over 17 years almost of a blockade, very tight blockade imposed on Gaza, because Israel and the US were unhappy with the results of elections in 2006 that the US shoved down the throats of the Palestinian Authority, Condoleezza Rice, forced. And the Palestinian Authority said, we cannot do it. We're not going to win. No, you have to do it. And then when the results came out that 75% of the seats, Hamas won, they didn't like the results. So what they did, they imposed the blockade and did not recognize the results. So there's been blockade on Gaza. And so these people from Gaza can't get out to get medical treatment. Students who get scholarships can go to study. And you know, you've heard about it. Many of us intervened to get students to even get out on scholarships. Even people can't go and visit their relatives. And it's very, it's suffocating. And Israel doesn't allow a lot of material to get into Gaza. I mean, even before October 7th, there were people still fighting to get cement and other material from 2014 or from 2008, 2009, or from 2012, from the destroyed buildings, to be able to build, because there is a whole list of material on the list that are not allowed. Israel would not allow to come into Gaza. I mean, so this is not, it's not new. Now there is more things that are not allowed, including bargain medical supplies. Now, this is the second vaccination of polio, against polio. Now, all the health organizations, World Health Organization, everybody is saying, we need to vaccinate the kids, 640,000 kids, because we found polio, and we thought that polio was eliminated. They need to be vaccinated. Now they have to bargain. Now they have to beg the Israeli government to allow the doctors to vaccinate the children. Every single step of life is being, when you have every single step, of course you want to break free. Of course you, why wouldn't you want to break free? And why wouldn't you, when people who led the Aqsa flood broke the, why wouldn't Palestinians from Gaza break out and come to breathe? Why wouldn't they? I mean, if they didn't, they would be crazy. They would be stupid. You see the open in front of you, and actually you wouldn't walk through. You would. I mean, anybody would if you find it, and especially because if you actually think that's going to be open, it won't close. You go. But at that time, probably you don't even think. Maybe some people don't think it's open. I'm going to go. Maybe I'll be able to get to the West Bank. Maybe I'll be able to get whatever, you know. And so these are things that people do not. It's written. It's all in the news accounts, all of it. But you have to sift through, because the narrative that is presented does not present all of this. The narrative that's presented are Palestinians are monsters. Palestinians are terrorists. This is the terrorist behavior. Terrorists cannot behave like civilized people, the Israelis. The Israelis care for people. The Israelis who already killed over 42,000 Palestinians in Gaza. And now 2,000 people in Lebanon, 10,000 injured, 235,000 Lebanese have already become refugees in Syria. You know how Syrians became refugees in Lebanon? Now 235,000 Lebanese are now refugees in Syria. The whole Lebanese south is displaced. All the homes, the olive groves, everything is destroyed. This, how civilized? I mean, this is, and I'm not talking to like a hostile crowd to kind of like emotionally move you, but really rationally think about it. How are we supposed to believe this? And how are we supposed to keep our rationality even and not be moved when we read accounts of this sort? And we see the images that we see. And I don't want to go over the horrible images that we see, because you've seen them all. But when you present it with something of this sort, when you present it of Palestinians as terrorists, when this is the image that's constructed, when this is the image of what Palestinians are constructed, and historically this has been the case. Historically, the Palestinians have not been able to see the light. They have not been able to fight for self. Every time they fight for self-determination, they get crushed. Every time they even sign a so-called peace agreement, even an agreement that strengthens and legitimizes colonialism, like the Oslo Accord, is still not good enough. It's still not good enough. And they signed it in 1993. And for people who do not know, it divides, it's only over the West Bank and Gaza. And it only frees Gaza and Jericho, only. It's only Israel supposed to only withdraw from Gaza and Jericho. As for the other parts of the West Bank, yeah, that's the only place they're supposed to withdraw from. As for the rest of the parts of the West Bank, there is area A, B, C. A is where the Palestinian Authority rules, but Israel can come anytime at night for raids, and they come every single night to arrest people. B is where is shared control. Israel has more control. And C is total Israeli control. And now the settlements where they're building is in area C, but they are also in area B, because when the settlers go and put what they call illegal post, they put it, then it becomes legalized, because every single time the Minister of Housing or any other minister like Ben Gvir or Motors, they all allow it. They will go and there is pressure, they will say, okay, because some of them live in the settlements, they are ministers. Every single time they encroach, they attack Palestinian villagers while we're watching Gaza. This is happening in the West Bank every single day. So the livelihood of Palestinians is being, the life is being sucked out of it. People can't even breathe. Man, literally cannot breathe. It's happening every single day. And the news that for me, I'm so afraid to open the phone, because my family lives between Nablus, Ramallah, and Jerusalem. I am so afraid to open it and find out that somebody is on the road. And now I'm satisfied that Israel doesn't allow anybody to get out of the cities. So at least my brothers don't drive on the roads. You cannot. They said it's just like Aqsa Intifada. You cannot get outside of the road. If you want to get from one city to another, you have to take a taxi with Israeli license plate. You can't get out of the borders of Nablus, the borders of Ramallah. You cannot. And they come in raids. They've been raids in the old city of Nablus. They've been raids. Yesterday, 18 people were killed in Tulkarem. They were bombed from the sky. Like this was very rare in the Aqsa Intifada. Very rare. Like when they did it, people were so shocked. Now it's happening almost on a daily basis. In Tulkarem refugee camp, Jenin refugee camp, everywhere. I mean, when they did it back then in Jenin, they didn't even do it in Balat or anything. It was so shocking. People were shocked. Now it's happening all the time. They're bombing people, bombed by airplanes, because they don't come. They never come in infantry. They come in the personnel carriers, or they come in tanks. They come in these big machines, and they're hiding behind them. The soldiers now, this is why they're worried about them in Lebanon, because now it's going to be arm-to-arm combat. No longer the airplanes protecting you and the tanks protecting you. Now you have to go fight human. So that's a bit scary. But before the tanks come in and so on, and the tanks from their little hole, and we saw them shooting people. So it's very scary. I mean, this is something that is happening every single day, and people are very worried about their lives. This is the situation that is happening everywhere. This is why when you look at all surveys, you see even the surveys that are produced by study centers that are funded by the United States, by US agencies. At the very least, the worst, it says 75% of Palestinians support Hamas. Do 75% of the Palestinians necessarily support everything about Hamas? Not necessarily. And in the 60s, it wasn't 75% of the Palestinians that supported the left militant group. They did. They supported them on the basis that they were fighting for Palestine. And this is the same reason. And when Fatah took on the fight and was fighting, was very popular among Palestinians, not only in refugee camps, in all parts of Palestine. People, the groups fight, they get support. This is also why the Palestinian Communist Party never became very popular. While the militant Palestinian groups, which also are Marxist-Leninists, became very popular because they were fighting. I mean, this is part of it. It's not because it's the same ideology. So why there is support for this group and not support for that? It's about fighting. So it is, and then there is also now leftist groups that are fighting. So this is some of the complicated map that people don't want to listen to. They don't want to hear that we are in a colonial situation. We are dealing with settler colonialism, and settler colonialism is being confronted with a resistance that is confronting settler colonialism based on different things that we know and new things we do not know. There is different ways, and this is also uplifts the spirit of Palestinians. The last point, and I want to stop because so we can have discussion. The last point that, and there I missed a lot of points, but we can talk about them. The last thing is that to think about what is it that continues this kind of struggle. I went a lot over. Did I go a lot over? I'm going just because you gave me 30 minutes. I'm not looking even at the. Okay, the two last things I wanted to talk. I wanted to actually talk about the campus situation, but we can talk about it in the discussion. But I wanted to talk about what makes the kind of how is it that that Palestinians can actually continue their struggle and achieve their rights. And I want to go back to the 60s, and I want to go back to the Vietnam War. And in the Vietnam War, it was a combination of the Vietnamese people who sacrificed. 3 million Vietnamese were killed, and there are many already still suffer from Agent Orange, from napalm. They're still living the scars of the war. 57,000 US soldiers were killed. Also, of course, there are psychological, emotional scars of all the people who, whether they did things in the war that they are feeling terrible about, or they fought in a war that wasn't popular for all sorts of reasons. So this was very damaging. So, but it took that at that time, it was the solidarity that grew little by little. It started from opposing war, just opposing war in general, or supporting troops to come home. It wasn't really about the Vietnamese. Many people did not care about the Vietnamese. They just wanted people to come home. And then it started building more and more. And it started small group, but bigger and bigger and bigger, expressing solidarity with the Vietnamese, within SDS, Black Panthers, several groups, stronger, very, very clear. And the solidarity from the US and the struggle of the Vietnamese together, I believe is what made the victory happen. And now Palestinians in Gaza, if you look at the news agencies, if you read Arabic, you will see that every single thing that happens in the US, it's immediately reported in news agencies. Actually, sometimes in Palestine, you hear about them before you see them on news in the US. I'm kind of like, I learned about it. Oh, this is what's happening here. There is so much support. And you saw the kids in Gaza standing up and thanking the various campuses, standing on the rubble. And so, because they were so moved that people here are feeling their pain, are standing up with them, and they're saying, we don't want our taxes to be paying for this. We want arms embargo. But it raises an issue, and we should really discuss it in detail, that are we reaching the Vietnam moment for Palestine? The question is that the Vietnam moment should be in the Israeli society.
Yeah.
We're not reaching that in the Israeli society. And that's a big question. And so that's an issue of what does this really mean? We're reaching it internationally. In the US, we have never seen more changes than we've seen, qualitative changes, but we're not seeing it in Israeli society. In Israeli society, people are leaving. This year, compared with last year, only 3,700 Israelis came only to the Israel from outside, from the US and Europe. That's it. Only from the US. 19,000 came from the Soviet Union and former Soviet Union and socialist countries. That's it. Now, there is very small number that is going to Israel, immigrating, majority from the US and West. That's the smallest number that's going there. But it's all like the right wing, white supremacist racists who are going there because they are very much invested in the Israeli racist settler colonial project. So it raises an issue of what happens because a lot of the Israeli anti-Zionists who used to, who get beaten up in the demonstration, like Palestinians get beaten up, but the media doesn't tell us about that because they don't want us to know that there are Jews who oppose the Israeli government and are not in support of what is there. It's not about Jews and Arabs and all of this stuff, it's about Zionism. And so they don't want us to know about that. Many of them left. There is very few who remain, and you cannot tell them, we cannot as Palestinians say to them, stay, because they're not safe. And they don't want their children to stay there and be forced to serve in the military. And one of our very close friends said, they're trying to find tricks to not have their daughter go serve in the military, not to have their son and so on. They can't keep doing it. It's very difficult life to be living in very toxic society. They don't want to be there. I mean, it's not that the US or Germany but there are spaces where you can organize with other people, but they're leaving. So who's remaining? And what does this really mean for the Israeli settler colonial project? That is fighting Gaza. That's fighting the West Bank and Jerusalem. That's fighting Lebanon. That's all the countries in the region are against it, and the countries who are not against it are silent. They wanted to normalize. And the only support in the world is the United States. Of course, it's very big support. But what does this really mean for this project? It only means that this project, the only way it can continue to survive is by funding from the United States, military killing machines from the United States, and more murder and more genocide. This is the only thing, because there is no other strategy. There is no other strategy that they can adopt. There isn't. I mean, you can think about it even rationally. What are they going to do? They don't even care about the hostages. They don't. I mean, even it's very clearly, Netanyahu, it's not even on the agenda. Every time he meets with the Security Council, talks about Lebanon, where we're going to go in Lebanon, where we're going to go in the West Bank, how we're going to hit Iran, how we're going to hit Yemen. This is the agenda. This is the agenda. It's not really the hostages. So there is even no more pretension about that. So this is where it's at. So I am sorry to say that we're going to see more killing, because that's the only weapon at their hands. And it means that we here, at least in the US, we do have a big task at our hands. And I'm not agitating you or something. I'm just saying, if we don't expedite and move fast and impose an arms embargo and not let this Biden, Harris, or any of them continue, we are going to we're going to see more blood at our hands. And I'm going to stop here.
Rabab, that was predictably amazing and very sobering, as expected also. And there's so much that we've been discussing with you that we wanted to bring up, and we'll see how much we get through now. But one of the things that I think would be really good to have you talk about is the role that the regional resistance has been playing in this latest phase of the liberation struggle in Palestine, and how it has challenged the sectarianism that has been a feature of regional politics for so long, and that too being a result of colonial and neo-colonial legacies, right?
Yes. I think, well, let me just say first, just to say what is the regional resistance. I think there are different parts. So we'll talk about first, let's talk about the street, the Arab street in the region. Okay, so we'll talk about the Arab region, that there is every day, there are protests in the streets, number one. So for example, in Jordan, every single day, the Jordanian government sprays the people with poisonous gas, arrests people, the intelligence picks people and interrogates them every single day. And they protest at the Israeli embassy and the US embassy every day. And then also in Jordan, I should say, for people who might not know, there is interesting things going on in the parliament in Jordan. So they said in the parliament, oh, nobody is going to win from the opposition. Actually, 31 members of the parliament won, and what they're doing, it's very interesting. They're proposing bills to abrogate the treaty between Jordan and Israel. There are bills in the Jordanian parliament. And they are also proposing bills not to send food to Israel because, you know, the Jordan, like when Israel needed food and there was, like, they weren't getting it, Jordan was sending it to them secretly. And the opposition found that out. So there is a huge opposition to that in Jordan. So they're doing that because they cannot, they're protesting. So the King Abdullah comes to the United Nations and makes this big speech that this is unacceptable. So even Jordanian talk is becoming much more radicalized. It shows that even Jordan cannot anymore speak on what they said October 6th. Let's just say October 6th or October 5th or whatever. Okay. That every single place in the region, Morocco, has a very strong boycott. Very strong. Young people have a boycott and anti-normalization. Every single, they're all coordinating with each other. Younger people and also people who are in the various parties collaborate all across the Arab world, everywhere. There is Bahrain, they're organizing. Kuwait, and I'm not talking about the political, don't want to talk about the official level, I'll come to that. But there is so much stuff happening on the popular level, and but of course people get arrested, like for Bahrain, they'll pick them up. There is some places where, you know, it's not allowed. United Arab Emirates, if you put something on the social media, they put you in prison, or you get fired from your job, or you're told to pack up you're going home. So, you know, you're not allowed to stay, especially Abu Dhabi, worse. Dubai is second, and then Sharjah is less. So, you know, not less hostile towards Palestine. But there is so much stuff. I mean, every single corner of the Arab world, people are rising. Okay? And of course, I would say everywhere in the third world, people are rising everywhere. So this is something that we have not seen before. Before, people were saying Palestine is forgotten. And actually, all the newspapers were saying, oh, nobody's thinking about Palestine. It's no longer the issue. Everybody, and then it comes again. And I think that we have never seen more solidarity with Palestine. I mean, and Palestine has, honestly, the most solidarity of any liberation movement. So if any Palestinian comes and says we don't have solidarity, I'm like, seriously? We have the most solidarity, and we should be so thankful for our comrades, sisters, and brothers, because people are really standing by us. The fact that we have a nasty settler colonial regime that's trying to crush us, that is supported by another settler colonial regime, is our bad luck. I mean, this is...
I mean, that's why it's been in the situation for 76 years.
Yeah,
more.
So this is, I mean, but the fact that people are really supporting all over and sacrificing. Now, we talk about the other side. On the ground, we do know Yemen is exercising BDS day in, day out. No ship that's carrying anything for Israel can go through the Red Sea. Boycott, divestment, and sanction. Boycott. No ship can go that's carrying to Israel. So they're taking care of that, right? I mean, they're doing other things, but I think that's so important. Because everywhere, so even like there is young Vietnamese activists here, they found out that there is a company in Vietnam that's carrying weapons that was stopped in Namibia. And Namibia, so it looks at the manifest, finds out there are weapons bound for Israel. Namibia stops it. So Vietnamese activists in Vietnam and here work with each other and submit a letter to the Vietnamese government saying this is not our history, this is not our values. You need to investigate this company because there are a lot of private, you know, Vietnam has a mixed economy. You need to stop it and you need to watch and you need to investigate what's going on. So like, okay, so I'm just saying an example that there is all of this stuff is spreading. Okay, you come, Iraqi resistance is actually actively fighting with the Palestinians, not fighting alone. You have Hezbollah, and not only Hezbollah, there's a whole bunch of groups in the south of Yemen, Lebanon, that are fighting and supporting, working with the Palestinians, and are saying we're not going to give up until Palestine, they said, we will do it when there is a ceasefire. Okay, of course, Gaza. And you have Iran. You have Iran, and I think, I mean, Iran, it's understood that Ismail Haniyeh was assassinated when he was there to attend the inauguration of the president. That's a huge insult. So if you're doing it only as a diplomatic thing, it's important, but if you're doing it as solidarity with the Palestinians or with the Hezbollah, because Hassan Nasrallah was assassinated, it's important. So that, and it's interesting is that none of the Arab countries around Iran that would have been up in arms and start saying we need to isolate Iran, you know, in the past. And they're sitting with the US shaking hands and drinking tea and, you know, wanting to sign agreements with, none of them are doing that. None of them are doing that. Nobody is, even Saudi Arabia, Mohammed bin Salman said there is not going to be any normalization with Israel without Palestinians realizing their self-determination and their rights and a Palestinian state. I mean, it's not like he changed. He's no longer having partnership with Jared Kushner. Because, I mean, he has a lot of business deals. He does. And this guy is, you know, he has his own ambitions. But there's pressure, even in Saudi Arabia, which is so repressive. There is all sorts of liberal rights, you know, so, okay, all women can drive now. You can have coffee shops. You can have malls. You can have clothes displayed in the windows of this, all of this stuff, all the appearances, cosmetic. But of course, there you can't have political parties, you can't have rallies, and none of that is allowed. But they are, even that, they feel the pressure, they feel the heat of the street. And so we don't, I mean, what's going to happen next is a question, because when Arab revolutions came out in 2011, the counter-revolutionary forces came out so strong, and they crushed so strong. In Egypt, at least in one massacre, 800 people were killed in Rabab al-Adawiyya. I mean, it's not a joke. It's not a joke. Neither Arab reactionary forces, government, nor the US, of course, Israel is behind it, are going to, they say they're not going to allow it. Now, does it mean they're going to succeed not allowing it? That's not inevitable. We do not know. I mean, is it our fate that we're going to always lose? Not necessarily. And if people believed that their goal is going to be defeated, people will not continue fighting. People believe, when people talk about revolutionary optimism, they believe that maybe not for them. I know there is a Palestinian group called Within Our Lifetime, and then they say within our lifetime. I say within your lifetime, because it's not, you know, it's, but there is a commitment, there is a belief and a commitment to this cause that is just, and that it is something that's actually best for everybody, and that people are willing to sacrifice. And if you think that there are no Palestinians anywhere outside of the colonized area, you see what people are sacrificing. You're always ashamed that whatever you're doing is not enough, you know. So if they're sacrificing so much, the least you could do is you stand and you be counted. You do whatever you donate for food, for medicine, you go to a protest. And so that's happening everywhere. It's happening in the diaspora. It's happening in the streets of the Arab world, and it's actually really bringing people together. And the whole region, Turkey. Where is Islam? Because I mean, this is it's always a mixed thing, but it's everywhere. Everywhere there is something that, like, this was something that has ended. Let's say in the mid-70s. Part of it because Abdel Nasser died in Egypt. Sadat came in, did the open door policy, so brought in all the liberal policies, crushed all the nationalist policies, the support of the state, of the people, and so on, and then proceeded to have the agreement with Israel, went to Jerusalem and really destroyed it. So the biggest Arab country fell, apart. So this was, really big issue. And so we started little by little seeing deterioration in the Arab world. And of course, then later on the Soviet Union fell, and there is a lot of fights between the various Arab countries. So this is the second part that you're talking about, which is the sectarianism. So historically, in Arab revolutionary forces, people never asked I mean, I know if anybody comes to ask you as a Palestinian, what religion are you? You think they are Asians. I mean, really, why are you asking? Why would you ask? What's the purpose? Does it matter what religion you are? You believe in a political program, that's it. But then there is the first Israel started nurturing more and more with its various invasions of Lebanon. And you see that historically, because when the French colonialism left behind it in 1943, Lebanese constitution that divides the country between sects. And the parliament, everything is divided among sects. And since then, there hasn't been census in Lebanon. They don't want to count, because if they count, it shakes the balance, because it's not going to be according to that recipe that the French imagined. It might not be true, but they imagined, and they left it in that way, divide and rule. That's what they do. So, so they didn't, and the Lebanese civil war wasn't really a civil war between Christians and Muslims. It was really over structural inequality. It was over the haves and the have-nots. It was over relationship to the West, colonialism. It was relationship with Palestine and Israel. This was what it is. The Lebanese civil national movement was very much allied with the Palestinians, and the Lebanese reactionary forces were allied with Israel and the US and France. And so they tried. And so Israel raided in 1978. Then in 1982, they invaded, and when they withdrew, they tried to install Gemayel as, a president. When Gemayel was assassinated, they tried, and Sharon is the one who made it easy for the Lebanese right-wingers to go slaughter Palestinians in Sabra al-Shatila after the US envoy promised for the safety of the Palestinian civilians after the PLO made the deal and left. So they started Israel started supporting the Phalange, which are part of the Lebanese Christian, supported the South Lebanese army, which has a whole control. And this is where they have the Khiyam prison, where they tortured people for all sects, because Rajab Shara, Usuhab Shara, they're not Muslims. I mean, they were, she tried to assassinate. I mean, they were all tortured there, women, men from the resistance, Lebanese and Palestinians, and so on. So they were struggling with each other. And in 2000, they kicked out Israel. They liberated Lebanon, and they abrogated the treaty with Israel. And that was the birth of Hezbollah, by the way. But it was also the Communist Party was involved, the Palestinians were involved, a whole bunch of people, groups came together, and they were trying to push back the sectarianism. In the US tried to push sectarianism in Iraq. First, trying to push Saddam Hussein to attack Iran. No reason to attack Iran after 1 year after the revolution. 1979, the revolution wins. Give them a chance to breathe. They attack Iran. Now, Iranian government attacks all the left. They all become kind of like safe, what do you call it, safe game, or they can basically pick them up and so on. And million people die. I'm like, what's the point? And so it becomes like, so this whole Sunni-Shia still not really working as much until the US comes in and starts also dividing. And it increases more after the US invasion. Iraq is divided into different sectarian parts. And also all the progress, the movements, education, the social programs, they're all destroyed. I mean, you can say whatever you want about Saddam Hussein, and the biggest crime he did is really invading. He should not Kuwait, even Iran. Iran is even worse crime than that. Really, that's should have never done it. Believe the US. That's what happens to you, and really, because they never learn. But they did that, and Israel tried to do sectarianism. They did that, and then they started saying Sunni Shia. Look now, okay, you want to talk about the majority of Palestinians are Sunni, right? South Lebanon Shia, Iran is Shia, Iraq is Shia. I don't know what Yemeni Houthi Shia is. Like, who cares? The way people are struggling against colonialism, and it doesn't. This whole hide by colonial forces are trying to name, like, even all the people who used to always give you analysis and get cited, so and so from the Washington this and Washington that, they're all the talking heads and the experts and so. Nobody, nobody is giving you any analysis, any sectarian analysis. None of them, because they can't. They can't make it. They can't make it work. There is no way they can make it work. It doesn't. So this is something that's actually really important that and they don't want to talk about it, because if they talk about it, it shows the failure of all their analysis before, which wasn't just analysis. It was also wishful thinking. It was an agenda. It was an agenda.
Building up that.
It was an agenda. Yeah.
Right.
So I think this is something really great, because also the other factor in the Palestinian movement, that also the whole discourse around the Jewishness, around Zionism and so on, here in the movement in the US, okay, leave Israel alone. Okay, that's a problem. But in the US and other parts of the world, there is so many anti-Zionist Jewish comrades that are like moving. The fact, all these actions that people did in the Congress, in the Grand Central Station, in the Statue of Liberty, everywhere else, it was so important, because A, opened the space for everybody to do it. B, using privilege in order to do something really, really important politically. Open the space for everyone to protect the Palestinians. I mean, this shows part of the movement, send the message stronger than everything else. And this shows that, this is, so they can talk, all the Zionist groups can say whatever they want. It doesn't work. That their arguments do not work, that it is anti-Semitic. When we went to the Palestinian conference in Detroit, everybody was there from all sorts of backgrounds. And this is the kind of society, not the whole sort of superficial, neoliberal, multicultural. No, it's actually really, no, but I mean, it's real people who have a purpose, who are really struggling for a different kind of world, not only a different kind of a Palestine, but also that is just but also a different kind of world, because they're not only concerned about the whole world, about the US, and people are working to that and very, very clear about it and uncompromised and unapologetic. And so you're talking about the older people, and then to all the young people, just so many young people that are struggling with a very clear goal, with very clear purpose, with a clear ideology. They understand what's going on. If they don't, they talk with each other. They're having study groups. They're also organizing in the street. I think there is something that is, and this is comparing with Vietnam, so much faster than the development, of the reaction. It took a while, but also this is the cumulative effect of social movement. If they took a longer time before, it shouldn't take the same length now. I mean, people learn from things that has happened. So yeah, so anyway, sorry, I would be
No, that's exactly what we wanted you to do. Where did you want to? Yeah, should we open up? For questions?
We can open. We have additional questions for you.
Yeah.
We can
But I
open
think
it
it
up.
would be
for
nice to,
Susie.
yeah. Do you want to come up? Is there somebody who had a question? Oh, yes, Hester.
I want to welcome you back, Rabab.
Thank you.
So moving.
She was my professor.
I listened today to a long speech by Chris Hedges, and I wanted to have your comment on him. I think he's being remarkable.
Yeah, he's been really good. Yeah.
Just wanted to know if you had a reaction.
Yeah, he's been really, really great. I mean, I haven't heard today, and I'm not always able to hear, but he's been really great. Many people have turned and have actually become like they're seeing the light. And if they didn't see the light before, that's okay. They're seeing the light now. People can make mistakes and change. That's fine. We don't really need to kind of like remind them of the past. It's fine. They're actually doing the right thing now. So a lot of people have changed. So that's really the most important thing. And yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. Yes, I will.
Yeah. I'm stealing one of our collective questions, but thank you so much, Rabab. You know so much. I wanted to ask, like, do you think that people view revolutionary violence? Like, I'm thinking about the responses to al-Aqsa flood and thinking about how people view revolutionary violence, particularly on the left today versus in the 60s and 70s? And, you know, if there's been a shift, like what role did the war on terror play in that?
I think, first of all, I think we need to define what's the left. Because actually, even when we talk about the 60s and the 70s, and I think I was also part of that mistake, we think about the left as the white left. And also the dominant thing, the Democratic Party, DSA, Bernie Sanders, AOC, they put them all in the left. And of course, the Republican also, they think everybody is left who is not MAGA. So I think, but to me, I think the left is sort of like, there is the conventional and there is the new left. But I think one of the, for me, the biggest mistake that I've corrected myself, and I think it was maybe 3 years ago at one of the panels we did at ASA, is that why do we always think about the left as only the white left? Why don't we include, for example, Black Panther Party, Brown Beret, Young Lords? I mean, all of the groups, these groups all adopted Marxism, Leninism. They all interacted with everybody else. But we were pursuing the same analysis of the white left, that there is the left and there is, quote unquote, the minorities. And so I think in that analysis itself, it's actually a racist analysis, right? So when you think about that, we think about that, things shift. So there is a left that never actually bothered around the whole question of liberation movements and revolutionary violence, never, because they had a problem with it, whether we talk about Palestine or anywhere else. They had a problem with it. And also Vietnam, had a problem with Vietnam. They were, anti-war, but they didn't want to, they weren't for liberation movements. And I think part of it intellectually is that they did not, in their understanding of quote unquote the national question, let's say the debate between Lenin and Rosa Luxemburg, they took the part of Rosa Luxemburg, not understanding what does it mean when people are engaging in, and I'm not saying necessarily I 100% agree with Lenin that it's a means to a goal, but I'm saying there is a deeper understanding of how it is. And it goes beyond, because it's not only in Marxism, it's about liberation, which you have to include Cabral, you have to include Fanon. There is a lot of theories, a lot of theories about that, thinking about it, a lot more that came out around that. That is not enough. I don't think Lenin is enough. So I think it's beyond that. But they did not understand that, and they cursed it all. That's one of the things. The second thing is that a lot of the people who were left and leading a lot of the movements and anti-war and so on and so forth were Zionists. They might not have been overt Zionists, but Zionism was so normalized, part and parcel of their lives, daily lives, that they might not even have been aware of it. But Israel was at least the land of milk and honey in the 50s until people say 67, I don't think until 67, because also in 60s and 70s, it took a very long time. In 82, even 82, the peace movement did not. But Lebanon was being bombed and 1 million people were in Central Park protesting nuclear weapons, and they wouldn't even have a speaker. Noam Chomsky, wrote a very big critique about that, about the peace movement. But people change. Many of the people who were leading that movement now are part of the BDS, of many discussions and so on. But I think there is, I think that's part of it, the whole question about whether the liberation should be on national basis or not, or should be only on class basis, which I think both are problematic, because you cannot do one or the other. You have to not, I don't want to even use intersectionality, because I don't think that's sufficient. I think we need to think about justice and different inequalities, bring them all together and think about it in anti-colonial perspective. Okay, so that's one aspect of it. And then the whole question about that, but then the other questions about violence, it's not only about whether you support liberation or not, how you support liberation. Do people have the right to actually carry arms? Or are they called infantile leftism? It's not the Palestinians only who were called that, right? Not the Palestinians only. Maybe they don't know how to do it. there is also this kind of elitist perspective from what might be called the US left towards the rest of the third world. And it's very interesting because it's not like the US left accomplished a lot to be able to reach to the rest of the world. So like, you know, if you're, I mean, I will listen to what Cubans say. Because there is a very alive example right in front of me. But honestly, I mean, do it and come teach me. I'll learn. But this is it's very like theoretical and philosophical discussions and so on, and I think it's very elitist and it's very racist, and it carries remnants of the colonial discourse that if you read a lot of the stuff is sort of like, and it has in a lot of the writings of it, looking down, that if you kind of like, if you step out of this backwardness of this, if you develop, and it goes back to kind of like you develop in, you know, how Marx from primitive capitalism to feudalism to, you know, to feudalism to capitalism, socialism, and then communism. So there is the stages that teleologically, if you go through, so if you're in a primitive or in feudalism, you need a long way. So there's a question, if you come from a peasant society, for example, do you have the conditions, and you don't have a lot of workers, do you have the conditions to be able to build a socialist revolution? Because that's the goal. That's the idea. If you don't, and then for Palestine, for example, even Palestinian Marxists, they say, oh, we don't have enough workers. I'm like, what about all the working peasants? I mean, they're workers, they're agricultural workers. We don't have big machinery. We're not China. This is, I mean, most of the third world is like that. Why you don't think about kind of like turning things around and thinking about shifting that? So that's in itself is that there isn't a lot of knowledge about that, and there is a lot of Eurocentrism. And this is not something only that deals with the, let's say, the third world, because it also has been a problem in the US labor movement around people of color, third world people in this country. It has split the labor movement for a very long time. It has been in the women's movement, and many things that has this kind of tendencies that has been challenged. Things are getting better, but it carries to now. So I think some folks do not come today and say that they have a problem with, maybe you don't want to call it revolutionary, but you want to say the right of people to self-determination and the right of nations to defend themselves, because that's what it is. It's it's even in the United Nations, which is the most beige formulation that is there, right? I mean, it is. So why is it that theoretically you support that, and there isn't a single example in anywhere in the third world, even Cuba, that's cut to the model that's completely Marxist, Leninist, the way Marx talked about? But there isn't.
China.
So what?
Even
China. So what business? You know, I mean, it doesn't. It isn't there. So how are you going to work it? You want to tailor cut the people to fit them within this theory? It doesn't work. So maybe you need to think about this, all the theoretical stuff that you're holding, that maybe it needs to have more flexibility. Maybe it needs to kind of like work a little bit more with the context, you know. So maybe you need to be a little bit more humble. I mean, and I know because like when we used to talk with people like that, we're never like sitting at the same level. There is always this elitist air that we're going to come. It's not with comrades talking with each other, exchanging information. There is this superior air. And we're going to, it's very annoying, but I mean, you're polite towards your comrades and you don't say anything, but it's very troubling. So I think it comes out of it, and I'm saying that there are people who change, and there are, I think, groups that are, let's say, maybe more aligned with Cuba, for example, or something. Maybe they learn from other places, and that helps. That there are other people who they learn from, and so on. But I do think that it needs a lot. I think it needs a lot, and I think there is more stuff that needs to happen, because everywhere, when you're talking about where is the support for Puerto Rico, for example, where's support for all liberation movement? It takes such a long time. I mean, some movements get crushed before more support, when it's so vital at certain periods, it's so vital to come in. It's not just for Palestine. I mean, Palestine sort of hides behind the fact of exceptionalism, around the fact of anti-Semitism. People can do that, but it is a principle that upholds in many other places. So, but it's easier to hide it behind this, right?
Somebody, did you want to read out the question?
I can read one.
Yeah.
Okay. There's a question from one of the webinar participants. Should we be preparing ourselves for an intense hot war that spreads to the entire West Asia for at least 3 years? And do you think that there could be an uprising in Jordan that has strategic consequences?
I don't know if there is going to be a war. I think there are many conditions that might make it happen or not. The US says that they don't want. They want to hold it probably until the elections, because they actually have the illusion that they will win. And I know that the revolutionary forces do not want. I mean, why do they? They have no interest in making a war and implicating everybody. They want to support Palestinian liberation, and they want to deter Israel. So but it's also, the thing is, so there is so many moving pieces. So what does Netanyahu want? What does the other forces in Israel want vis-a-vis Netanyahu? How much they're going to continue to support him? Because there is already, I can't believe how much popularity he has. And there is all these people that are supposed to be military strategists, political strategists, and so on. What's going on there? What's going to happen? Let's say Iran says they're not going to stop. They gave so many statements every single day, because now the US comes with us and says, oh no, they're so weak. And then they also, today in the paper, Hezbollah is so weak, it cannot do anything. And then the missiles are coming in today. So if they're so weak, how come who's doing this? It's coming from out of nowhere. It just doesn't fit, okay? So we do not know what is going to happen and where is the US. The US definitely is moving more fleets in the region, sending more weapons to Israel and so on. The US is calculating. They're telling Netanyahu, but why is he going to listen to them if every single time the red line keeps moving? You know, it's like, oh, please listen to us. Why should they listen? Why should they? Every single thing they threatened him, he did. So he's continuing with it. And the bombings and the assassinations and so on is a reward to give him more power. And so I don't know. I don't know where it's going. It doesn't look like anybody in the region wants a regional war. Whether it's happened or not, I'm not sure. In Jordan, I also don't know, because the regime is very powerful, and the regime has a lot of US bases and power and support. And the US is very much invested in not having this regime fall. The United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia also are very invested to make sure that this regime remains. Is there going to be enough balance of forces to tip the balance towards the movement against it? Because the demonstration don't stop. They last till midnight. I mean, they're always in the street, and people get arrested and they come out and they do it again and again and again. And the military is out there to crush them, and they keep doing it. So the question is that how long, and how much people are going to do it, and how steadfast people are going to be in Gaza. Not only, I mean, there will be steadfast, but if Israel does this whole annihilation, nuclear, there's nothing you could do. They did have several calls for nuclear. They haven't done it yet, but they did. And they did say that they might bomb Iran's nuclear. They did. But the thing is that the missiles from Iraq, they reached Dimona, where Israel has its nuclear reactors. So And the message to Israel is kind of like, don't mess with us. So there is so many things that are moving. We can think of a better scenario is that people really need to pressure to stop the bloodshed and the massacres that are going on. Stop them. Stop them. But it's not in the best interest of the US or Israel. It's not. It's definitely in the interest of the people to stop it so people can breathe, people can build, and people can move towards better conditions, fight for their liberation, for Palestinian liberation, for return, for different conditions, because nobody's going to accept the previous Palestinian Authority or anything like that. Nobody's going to go for it anymore. But that needs different space to breathe. People need to bury their dead. They haven't been able to even take everybody from under the rubble. So, yeah. Speculation, because we can all speculate. Nobody can have 100% responses. Yes.
I have a question about something you said before. You said you think that Palestinians have the most solidarity of any colonial liberation project. Why do you think that is? And how does that sit with you?
How is that?
How does it sit with you? Does it ever feel tokenistic, or does it ever feel strange, or that maybe this solidarity isn't shown to other colonial liberation projects?
The first part. I got the second part.
Yes.
I forgot the first part.
First part is, why do you think?
Why do I think? I mean, there is a lot of why there is solidarity, or why am I saying? I think there is.
Yeah. Why did you say you think Palestinians?
I mean, there was support, a lot of support for South Africa anti-apartheid movement, for sure, a lot. But there is the South African anti-apartheid movement start kind of evolve in a particular in the 80s, in particularly the anti-apartheid movement. There was a lot of support for the ANC, the PLC, the Black Consciousness movement in different parts of the world. But really, it took when it spread a lot in the Western countries, and divestment specifically. That is and made the apartheid regime a pariah. That was kind of I mean, they're still there, and they have the resources, and the economic apartheid exists. It hasn't been eliminated. Okay, so the socio-economic is there. It's only the political apartheid in the laws that has been eliminated. There has been support for other, but I think I have not seen support for any liberation movement more than the Palestinians. I mean, if you look at all the studies everywhere, it took a while, because if you go to the 60s and even read the literature of other liberation movements, the Black Power here, the indigenous, for the Black Power, you will see it on Black Panthers at a certain period. After they go to Algeria and so on, there is there, but it's not everywhere. You see it in certain places where people are very conscious, very internationalist. But today, it has gone to different heights. I mean, the response, the coordination, the everywhere is sort of like a concert. People are responding. And I'm saying this. I'd say actually this to the Palestinians. When Palestinians say we are alone, like, what do you mean we are alone? Look at the word. Look at the support. Our problem is with the US being the biggest supporter of Israel. That's a huge thing, and because Israel has a strong lobby in the US. South Africa never had a lobby, apartheid lobby. We never had that, It's not that. So, how does that sit with me? I think we need to be humble, and because of this, and I think it's happening because Palestine signifies justice. And I don't think we should think of it as something that makes us arrogant or chauvinistic or better than other people. Palestinian people did suffer and suffer for a long time. I don't I don't appreciate it when Palestinians say we are the longest occupation or we're the ones who suffered the most. This, Oppression Olympics is very bad. It's very, very bad. It's not only bad to say, articulate it, it's very damaging to movements because we're engaged in divide and conquer. We're playing the same game of the colonists ourselves. So that's we should not. But we need to keep Palestine about justice, not about narrow nationalist goals or we're different, we're better than other people. No. And we should always be connecting with other struggles. And when we have a space, we should share our space with other people. Whenever we are able to speak, other movements that are maybe less like seen, we need to make them seen. Because also we experience that we are erased and we are gaslighted. In many places, for example, the Central American solidarity movements, the U.S. peace movements erased us. There is no space for Palestinians, precisely because of Zionism, and Palestine was eliminated. So now, when Palestine has a space and so on, for example, we cannot but make a space for Kashmir. See, we have now we have power, we have a bit more of space, so we should share it. We should we should model how justice for Palestine is connected with all sorts of justice. So we cannot compromise on gender justice. We cannot compromise on sexual justice. We cannot compromise on labor. We cannot say it's okay to go make alliances with corrupt business who exploit their workers. We cannot do that. We should not allow ourselves, and we should be held accountable by everybody else. That we cannot do that because this is the solidarity goes always. It's not transactional. We have this is a privilege that, solidarity is a responsibility, but it's also a privilege for us to also share with everybody else and say, we need to also be open to everybody to work with each other. That should not make us let it go to our heads and basically become egotistical towards other people. We use it in order for us to build a different world, because a different world will be good for all of us. It's something that we all want. And I think this is what Palestine should be always about, is and always about. And I think this is why Palestine gains support too, because this is when people understood it's Palestine about justice. It's not about just setting up a little state that Mahmoud Abbas wants to set. I think that's where the support comes in. And with all the statements and all the calls that are coming from Gaza and so on, nobody makes a narrow nationalist. Watch all the calls and all the calls on people. They talk about have a strike, do this. There isn't this very strange if somebody comes up with something like that. So I think there is this kind of understanding that is very deep, the consciousness and the consciousness of other people, that we're not in the world alone. We are with other people. We are part of the world, but not this, again, not the multiculti liberal stuff, but really we are in principle stance. We have each other's back, and people have our back and should have our back.
Thank you so much, Rabab. I think that is a great place to end this conversation, and of course, give you a break also. But it's just so lovely to be able to host you and to give you the space to have the talk. And I'm so glad that it's going to happen in Wake Forest also. So yes. I think everybody works out for everyone. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Monday at 4 o'clock. So it said speak out on Monday at 4 o'clock at the steps in front of the grad center. And then we'll link up with the actions that are happening on October 7th, organized by Within Our Lifetime, and also a student Students for Justice in Palestine contingent that's meeting up across the city. Yeah, so 4 o'clock outside here at the Grad Center.
Thank you everyone for coming. There's more food, make sure to eat.
Higher.
That would be such a dream. In a second, that was excellent. That was
Really,
and it was such a powerful.